In this video, Dr. Jordan Peterson explains how men and women differ in selecting partners.
How do men and women differ in the way they evaluate mates? Well, here's a study. More than 1,000 respondents, primarily female. What they looked at was how much prestige each person had in their occupation, so kind of where they were situated in the dominance hierarchy, what their income was and their education. So they're all markers, they're all pretty decent markers of socioeconomic status, or they're pretty decent markers of status. So, and then they looked at how many partners each person had, number of lifetime partners, and number of preceding year sexual partners. Lifetime occurrence of simultaneous partners, so that was someone who was in a sexual relationship with more than one person at the same time. And lifetime frequency of simultaneous partners, from 1 very seldom or never to 5 very often. Here's their assumption. The number of partners a member of sex A acquires is an index of how often this individual is chosen by the other sex. It's just a definition. It's an indication of reproductive fitness as judged by members of the opposite sex. Results. Male criteria. For women, the correlation between their fertility rates and the number of partners in the previous year was 0.94. So that's basically markers of biological youth. And also markers of biological health, like symmetry, or waist-to-hip ratio, which actually tends to be correlated with reproductive fitness, because women with lower waist-to-hip ratios are generally healthier, because especially in youth, the acquisition of abdominal fat is often an indicator of subpar physical health. The correlation between the fertility rate and the number of partners in the previous year is 0.94. That's all of it. Right? You never see a correlation of 0.94 anywhere, ever. Males choose fertility, indicators, beauty, waist-to-hip ratio, youthful appearance, neonatinous facial features. And neonatinous means like an infant. So one of the markers of feminine beauty is a face that has small, childlike features. Female criteria. All respondents. The correlation between socioeconomic status and frequency of simultaneous partners. For men, it's 0.5. So the higher the status of the man, the more likely he has simultaneous sexual partners. So it means he's going out with someone sexually at the same time. For men, it's 0.49. For women, it's 0. Age 30 and over. Correlation between socioeconomic status and frequency of simultaneous partners. For men, it's 0.8. For women, it's 0. Age 30 to 39, the correlation between socioeconomic status for women and frequency of simultaneous partners. For men, it's 0.92. That's a very small n, though. For women, it's 0.11. Female criteria for men. It might reflect a tendency on the part of females to choose high-status partners during their own peak reproductive years. This might account especially for the strong relationship found in men between the age of 30 and 39. Women who typically prefer men 3 to 8 years older than they are would then be in their mid to late 20s, a time when fecundability and thus sensitivity to male resources is at its peak. Supporting evidence. I don't believe that, by the way. I don't think that women pick men for their socioeconomic status. I think that women pick men for their ability to climb the status hierarchy, because we forced women in an experiment that we never published to choose between those two things. Wealth versus ability. The women overwhelmingly chose ability. They just use wealth as a marker of ability. Okay, so Trivers. Parental investment model contends that women are more likely than men to seek a mate who possesses non-physical characteristics that maximize the survival or reproductive prospects of their offspring, and were examined in a meta-analysis of mate selection research. As predicted, women accorded more weight than men to socioeconomic status, ambitiousness, character, and intelligence. And the largest gender differences were observed for cues to resource acquisition, status, and ambitiousness. Also, as predicted, gender preferences were not found in preferences for characteristics unrelated to progeny survival, like sense of humor and general personality. Where valid comparisons could be made, the findings were generally invariant across generations, cultures, and research paradigms. One of the things that it strongly indicates is that men and women value different things. And that's worth thinking about. Because the hypothesis, and I think this is especially strongly held among people who are very young, is that the differences are cultural and the life course is the same. So, but that, I don't think there's any evidence that that's the case at all. I have a lot of experience dealing, for example, with large law firms. And one of the things that happens to large law firms, they're very competitive, eh? And the people who are partners are making a tremendous amount of money. So it would be generally in excess of $300,000, $400,000 a year. Now, in order to do that, they have to go through virtual enslavement during their internship. It's not called an internship, it's called their articling. And then they have to be on call 80 hours a week. That's the life. What happens is that they lose all their women in their 30s. They can't keep them. And it's not because they don't try, because they try. And the reason they try is that there just aren't that many people who are exceptionally able. And so the law firms are trying to keep every single person they possibly can who's exceptionally able, because those people produce profits for the law firm. It's just in their best interest. But the women all quit in their 30s. Well, why? Well, there's a bunch of reasons. The first reason is that a woman who's high in the socioeconomic ladder is going to pick a man who's high in the socioeconomic ladder. She's going to marry across or up. That's what the data show. And what that means is that most female potential law partners in their early 30s are married to someone who makes a fair bit of money. So the absolute magnitude of their income is no longer as relevant as it would be if they were single. It's also one of the factors, by the way, that's contributing to the polarization of society into those who have a lot of money and those who have none. Because what happens is that men who are rich will marry women who are poor, but women who are rich will not marry men who are poor. And so what happens across time is that sort of grinds its way through the culture, is that all the rich women are with rich men. And that increases the probability that wealth is going to pool in the hands of fewer and fewer people. What the women seem to conclude, I would say it's two things. One is that it's just not that much fun to work for 80 hours a week. Really, and if you want to have a life outside of work, that's not the way to do it. And so then you might ask, well, why would anyone work 80 hours a week? Because that's the real question. It's not why some women won't, because obviously, why would you, you know? The answer is, well, there's a lot of status and there's a lot of money associated with it. But the thing is that status is more important to men than it is to women. And I think that's individually true and also genetically true. Because for men, status is associated with how attractive they are to women. Whereas for women, socioeconomic status has nothing to do with how attractive they are to men. In fact, if anything, one of the things you find, for example, is that as women are segregated, so to speak, higher and higher up the IQ distribution, the probability that they'll get married goes lower and lower. And the reason for that is that it's harder, you know, if you're at the 95th percentile of intelligence, and you're going to marry across and up, you've already limited to 1 in 20 people. Just maintain the same level. And so if you're very intelligent, very educated, and you also have a very high status job, if you're a woman, well, first of all, you're bloody intimidating to most men, and second, the probability that you're going to choose from a spot in the hierarchy lower than you is very low. You're just not going to be attracted to that person. And so what happens to women who are exceptionally intelligent is that the pool of acceptable mating partners starts to become vanishingly small. So in that, combined with the propensity of women to judge 85% of men in online dating services as less attractive than average, makes it that much more difficult. Now I should say, you know, all the prejudice is clearly not on the side of women, and by no means, because if you look at male attitudes towards women in large online dating site studies, you'll find that their preference for body configuration is 21 years old. And that doesn't change as the male's age. So, you know, the selection criteria on both the male and the female side are extremely harsh.